Good afternoon. This is Dr. Craig Stern of Pharma Pharmaceutical Consultants and ProData Analytics. I'm delighted to have some time to talk to you again today. We've been spending quite a bit of time on these Facebook Live talking about healthcare policy, talking about healthcare models, what it means, what are some of the upsides, the downsides. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about patient desires, patient marketing, things like that. So today I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about what is the marketing that is going on to patients, what do patients want, and talk about it from another direction so that we begin to talk about this not just from a healthcare policy standpoint, but what's going on. And probably the biggest trend that's going on here is the retailization of pharmacy and of healthcare. And by that I mean, in the past, there were such things as docs in the box, doctors in a retail setting that would offer services to retail walk-in patients. However, today, it's very common, and all of the major chains have some sort of a retail operation where there are nurse practitioners who are dealing with treating patients, writing prescriptions, having them filled in the local pharmacy. Clearly there's a marketing model here that adds prescriptions to the pharmacy, but also brings people in to have common things done. They're not dealing with really complicated diagnoses. They're dealing with the most common things that are upper respiratory, perhaps urinary tract infections, some GI kinds of things like that. However, there's been multiple surveys done. Drugstore News has talked about it, but so have a bunch of others, and they've done a wonderful job in trying to talk about what are the predictions for 2016, then 2017, and going forward, and they've come up with some interesting ideas. I'm going to put them in kind of two buckets. One is marketing issues, and the other one is more retail business changes in order to deal with what patient desires are. So let's talk for a minute about marketing issues. Marketing issues. Number one is affordability. I mean, that's clearly across the entire spectrum. We just had an election about it. There's a host of models, but the reality of it is whether the election showed anything or whether politics got involved, the public is moving to more affordability, more transparency in pricing. The affordability is driving towards there's more clinical impact coming into pharmacies. So people are coming into pharmacies for more clinical types of services, whether it's comprehensive medication review or medication therapy management. Those things are happening. It's also happening where there are partnerships going on between pharmacy and hospitals, pharmacy and healthcare systems. There's even a PBM to PBM kind of model, which you wouldn't have thought about before, but the issue of CVS and OptumRx, both PBMs getting together and building partnerships. These kind of things are driven in order to build bulk, build a greater market share and access, and as a result drive down cost. The other thing that's interesting is virtual reality. Now, virtual reality is certainly part of a gaming world, but when you think about it, it could easily become part of medical education, pharmacy education, nursing education, because you can easily build a process where you're able to see the body in 3D and move it around in 4D and see what happens to it and learn through that. But virtual reality is also happening from a marketing standpoint, where people are able to have viewing rooms where they can see things about diseases. So for example, GSK has a marketing room where they're dealing with migraine immersion, and they're trying to deal with issues with regard to letting people see what it's like and what they should do in order to do therapy. Lowe's is dealing with it with robots in the aisles, but they're also dealing with it using Microsoft's technology to put people into virtual rooms to deal with do-it-yourself kind of projects. There is clearly a significant move for VR to be used in pharmacies so that people can see what happens with given disease, how they should approach it, how they should treat it, etc. So there is a significant move there. As an aside, by the way, it's interesting because virtual reality comes with a cost to it, and while cost is high, it certainly will come down over time. It means that people are willing to spend money on things that they enjoy and that they will address, rather than worrying about whether they're using it to pay for health care, but as a game perhaps it makes it more attractive. The other part of it is that there's a huge move in marrying healthcare and beauty. It's always been in the major retail pharmacy chains that there has been some sort of beauty products, beauty cases, perhaps beauty individuals to help with that. But now there's a significant marriage of the two, and that marriage is driving the issue where healthcare and beauty become one, and there will be products that are driven by what's going on as to what the derivative benefit is for healthcare. So expect, for example, that there's going to be dermatology products that will be sold that have a healthcare benefit more than a cosmetic benefit, and that's going to be a huge driver to what goes on. Also in line with that is healthy foods, and there's always been a group of people who've been interested in healthy foods, but even with the newer millennials and others, they're interested in eating healthy and having healthy foods, and they're moving to a whole group of things that have to deal with fresh, local, organic, natural, and healthy kind of products. So everybody's going to be looking at their products using data to try and deliver products that meet particular local delivery. And so they'll be marrying food and what does that do for your health with regard to losing weight, with regard to your diabetes control, your blood pressure control, your lipid control for that. And finally is something called the Cures Act, and I won't go into all details of the Cures Act, but I will bring up that it's driving the Food and Drug Administration to accelerate approvals of new things. So we're going to see new drugs faster, we're going to see new indications for drugs faster, new devices faster. There's already new hearing aids, potentially new drugs for migraine, and new drugs for lipids, etc. All of that is going to accelerate new approvals so that people will get products faster, easier, not necessarily less expensive, and that will of course be part of that affordability thing as people begin to ask the question, is it affordable? Can I deal with it with food? Can I deal with it with perhaps some beauty products or otherwise where I don't have to use drugs? On the other side, I want to deal with the whole retail channel, because the whole retail channel is changing, and it's changing because of the experience. And the experience here is that multiple surveys have been done. A Harris poll did a survey, and that 72% of millennials think that they buy based on the experience, not on the product. So as a result of that, the retail world is going to be heavily predicated on retail as an experience and turning pharmacies into what's known as retail-tainment or retail entertainment in order to make it more interesting for people to do that. Now, in parallel with that is the move from a omni-channel to a uni-channel in the stores. And what that means is that people are marrying the online purchasing with the store purchasing so that it becomes one, and they begin to make sure that if you're buying it online that you can pick it up in a retail store, you can get it faster and easier, and that changes the entire delivery mechanism of how people look at things, because then retailers do what they call go small, which means that they're going to more automated, technology-driven. Certainly Amazon is doing it, and so have others, in trying to deal with smaller, technology-driven, high-impact, high experience, but at the same time, frankly, less people and more of a technology-driven system that gives people what they want without having to deal with walking into a store trying to find someone to help them and things like that. And by the way, just to give it as an experience, in Canada, there's a different model. And the different model in a retail pharmacy is that when you walk into a retail store, there's an interest in having a customer service representative that comes to you, kind of like the Walmart greeter. But someone, however, that isn't just greeting, but is picking you up and helping you and giving you some experience. So people looking at a Canadian model in order to see whether there's some things that they can pick up for a U.S. model. The other part of it is that this is I want it now kind of a world, and younger people want that, but so have others as well. The I want it now is changing the delivery mechanism so that people are driving to a more same-day delivery. They're going towards drone delivery. They're going towards mobile payment. Now, the only one who's ever really done it well is Starbucks, where they've done to mobile payment. And now it's been estimated that about 21% of all of their payments are in mobile payment. Well, pharmacies will do the same thing, because at the end of the day, people don't necessarily want to go to a pharmacy. They may want to go there because of some beauty issues or others. They don't necessarily want to go there because they want to get a prescription, because it signifies that you're sick. Nobody wants to know that they're sick, and they don't certainly want to know that that experience has to be married to what they do. So all of this same-day delivery begins to move. At the end of the day, what are we saying? We're saying that what people are looking for, aside from the healthcare model and what they're going to get, is one, affordability, how they're going to pay for it. And they're willing to make trade-offs. They're willing to make some trade-offs of what they would get, and whether it's a virtual setting or otherwise, for what they would get from a healthcare model and deductibles and costs. But clearly, as that goes up, that becomes a problem. They're willing to address the delivery model where they can get things right now and don't have to spend time if they're tied up or they're busy at work, etc., and want to be able to get it so they don't have to go into a store in order to spend it on the weekend and deal with that time for doing it. They want more healthy things, more healthy foods, more healthy devices, more healthy drugs, things like that. There was a review that was done, and 63% of individuals said that they would prefer manufacturers to deal with innovation rather than lowering cost. At the same time, the vast majority of people are asking for lower costs, more affordability. And so that will become a major issue. But different and separate from the whole policy issue of how do you design it, how do you make it affordable, how do people react, and certainly that argument is going on today with regard to the Affordable Care Act. But it's also an issue about how do you address with people with what the delivery of the service is to the individual. And since most people go to a pharmacy, people in general go to a pharmacy 3 times for every time they go to a doctor. Clearly there's an issue where there's a need for medical care, pharmacy care, etc., that goes on that meets the customer's requirements with regard to do it now, same-day delivery, mobile payment, virtual reality to make an experience rather than something else. I think that that's an incredibly important issue. I think it's incredibly important for people to understand that this is an area where we're talking about not just healthcare policy, but what people want, and it's made healthcare into a very mobile world. Some physicians have argued to me that they used to spend 80% of their time dealing with things that are relatively simple, like colds and coughs and infections and things like that. But today, about 20% is spent on that, and 80% is spent on the sicker patient. So they're spending more time in doing that. What that means for all of us is that everybody's models are changing, and that people are asking for things that meet their requirements with regard to their time versus a physician's time, a pharmacy's time, spending time in a line to get prescriptions and things like that. It's kind of interesting. I hope you've enjoyed it. Next week we will not be having a Facebook Live because I will be traveling. We've been traveling quite a bit, but we'll be traveling all week next week, and we'll reconvene the following week. In the interim, please feel free to go to ProPharmaConsultants.com to RX InfoX, where we have news that is circulating so you can keep track of it, as well as what we do on the social media. In the interest of time, be well, have a wonderful rest of week, and I look forward to talking to you in a week or so.